Hi there, welcome to the third part of our Elite Dangerous Playguide, and in this episode we'll check out local trading. I know we've checked out trading in the beginner's guide, and this one will take us on from that, taking a look at the bulletin boards, and we can check out local missions. Here we are in Ashby City, Luton Store, and here is the result of all that exploring. We are now on Trailblazer rank, and if we take a look at the reputation, you can see we are allied with the Green Party faction in this system, and we are on friendly terms with the rest. You can see in the left panel we are allied to the entire system, and taking a look at the exploration, we have virtually 800 systems visited, and you can see quite some cash has been accumulated from that. And so in this guide, let's take a look at local trading. So once again we find ourselves in the standard computer, and before we even start this, why have I only got 1 million credits? Well, the reason for that is I bought myself an A-rated frameshift drive. As you can see in the other panel, the A5 will give us 26.5 light years travelling distance currently, and when that is laden it drops down to around 23, and that doesn't help with hull reinforcement packages knocking around there, and they weigh the ship down. And we can choose other things to fill up this space. Ideally, if our shield is great, then we really shouldn't need hull reinforcement packages, so we can always trade those in from our cargo space. Because this guide, this section, is all about local trading, we'll certainly need some cargo space, and you can see shield cell bank, that is just enough for what we really need at the moment. And I also spent the money on more thrusters as well. The thrusters are up to B grade, B5 thrusters, and those were extra cash I used from all that credit I got from exploring. So let's check out that bulletin board and let's make our rounds. It's always a good idea to check out the bulletin boards, and they will change periodically. You can see for 2 gold that rewards us a nice bundle of cash, so let's accept that, and that will give us a limited period to get those 2 gold back to Ashby City. You can see we are unable still to claim those Sirius Corporation missions. Those will still be unavailable because we haven't gained the reputation from the Sirius Corporation, and you can take on different faction reputations from local systems, so we don't have to visit Sirius directly. In fact, we need a permit to visit Sirius, so that isn't actually possible to do that way around. So we have the gold in our inventory as a possible job, so let's take that on. Let's leave this place, and it's always great to see a few other NPC commanders flying around in their ships as we leave the docking bay. Of course we can leave those standing still, and once again it goes without saying, I apologise if there is any stuttering in this video. It's very difficult on my machine to record this, and you can see the aspect ratio has suffered as well. But regardless of all those factors, I hope it is clear on your screen. And for this experiment, let's set off to a location which I know contains some minerals. These minerals will come in handy, so let's make that journey. Once again, to make this a little easier on you guys, let's just speed up that footage and let's just get there. LHS 357 has one major starport, and that is the Xylug. Of course, if a system only has one major starport, it makes the job a lot easier to write down the commodities that the entire system has on offer, and in this case the entire system offers minerals. station is also quite close to our jumping exit point around the star, so it won't take us that long to get there. In the meantime, let's just check out the traffic in this area, because if one of these guys is wanted, we may just find ourselves being interdicted, and we will come to interdictions at some point. We haven't arrived at that point just yet. Let's make our way there, and if we have no cargo, we will be scanned, but if we have no cargo, there is less of a chance of an interdiction, and we will become less of a target, of course, the less we have on board. So let's make our way to the station, and in this case the station is relatively calm in the Federation zone, and we won't usually get attacked at this stage unless we have a ship full of opportune goodies. It's the usual formula of requesting docking first of all, and sometimes in smaller stations you'll be refused docking if all those docking pads are actually being used, so you'll have to continually request docking until that is granted. Upon entering, you will have to cancel out some inertia and angle that thing in the opposite direction. If you are falling too fast, you will have to raise the nose. Ignoring that fuel, the first thing we need to do is check out that bulletin board, and this makes sure that we don't miss anything along the way. We'll be making our rounds around the Federation system that I like to call home, and look at this, subtly secure 2 slaves will pay us a nice profit, so let's accept that and let's see if we can get that in this guide, and that will certainly be nice income to accrue. Some of these are available and some of those are unavailable, but that cargo mission for a number of slaves will actually give us a long time to get those. And if we check out the transactions, it will actually say there the slaves take, well, maybe 6 days to get those, and the refinery, well, gives us a number of hours to get that gold back all the way to Bulletin Star. And yes, it has to be Ashby City. You'll be given a project for a station and it has to be the same one. We can't accept, and we can even decline a mission mid-mission. We can even reject it and throw that away, and to this point I don't think that loses much credit if you reject a mission. But for the meantime, we have found ourselves on the commodities board, and we find that certain items are well worth buying in this mineral depository. So we have just ordered a ship full of coltan, and you'll also see gold there. We need 2 gold, so let's buy those 2 gold. They aren't very expensive in this port, but they aren't very cheap either. There are cheaper places to buy gold, hopefully, as we shall see. But that's that mission completed. All we need to do is to fly back to Bulletin Star and to reap our prize. But before we do that, we'll continue our rounds around this galaxy and accumulate some more jobs, and we'll see if those can be fulfilled.
Landing gear retracted.
In this game, time is actually essential, so let's not waste any time, let's just get on with it. Boost function, and in this case it's on the default tab key. I've left that on the default. We can tab our way away from the mast lock, and will mean that we can get to our destination all the sooner, and it saves time hanging around as well. So all we need to do is to make sure our engines are on full boost and we can fly hell for leather away from the station. As soon as we are, we can press the M key and get on with the frame shift drive. On our arrival, Lacale is yet another mineral depository in the galaxy, and so let's head over to what I call Chow Landing. I'm not actually sure whether that is the pronunciation, and of course Lacale, however you pronounce that, there are many of those scattered throughout the universe, and so in this particular Milky Way you'll find a large number of those, but the one that I'm interested in has got a nice landing bay, and you can see there are mineral extraction sites. Any large gas giants with rings will have mineral extraction sites, and you will see in a later video we'll do a spot of mining. But before we get to the mining, let's check it out. There are two major terminals here. One of those is the landing bay that we're heading for at the moment, and it's an outpost, so anything bigger than an asp won't actually be able to land at this place. And an outpost is a very small outpost, basically a small station out on a limb in the middle of nowhere, with maybe 4 or 8 pads at most, and most of those will be class 3 size, which we are class 3, so we'll only just be able to fit on those. And as soon as we upgrade to virtually any other ship, we'll have to ignore outposts for the rest of the game. But that's why people buy small ships, and then they can visit outposts and clear up these missions. Able to make contact and get a clearance until we are at least 8 kilometers away from that station, and when we reach 4.5 it's probably a good time to lower that landing gear, and when we reach 3.5 sometimes it's good to press the 5 key or the 2 key, whichever keys you use, to drop down to 50 or 25% thrust. See, I'm on 25% thrust there, and it gives me enough time to slow down position ourselves above the landing pad. I'm overshooting that slightly, and then I can get above the rear launch ramp, and by pressing my L key I can actually switch on the lights and we can illuminate the launch ramp, and if we are facing in the correct direction, which we are, we can then head down as close as we can towards our landing spot in the middle of that landing bay. Having done so, we can press our 0 thrust key, angle that ship up, and simply press the R key to lower ourselves and reverse down onto that pad. And so we can approach different pads in different ways, but usually I like to approach by observing those rear ramps and looking at the bulletin board. We can find and scoop up some cargo. We haven't discovered the cargo scoop yet, but we will. And we can also collect some auto fabricators for a little more cash, which may come in handy, so we'll collect that, and if we can find somewhere that sells those auto fabricators, we can then bring those home. Checking out all those instrument panels, we can clearly see that in this system we are neutral basically to everybody. We are friendly with at least 2 factions in this system. We can see friendly there with the Futures Committee, and that gives us a general friendly rating in the system. We're an allied at the moment, and that means maybe some missions won't be available, but you can see we certainly need to attack authority vessels. We can gain some cash by doing that, and we can also attack traders and attack pirates, so you have to keep your eyes open on what the bulletin board asks us to attack. Taking another look at the commodities, you can see we are selling the coltan for a very small profit, but at least it was worth bringing it here. And this system and this station is actually very rich in metals, so you will find cheaper gold here, and you also find very cheap palladium. So let's encourage ourselves to gain a very full stock of that palladium before we move on to our next system, which is actually Altair. And checking out the bulletin boards, you can see the supply is very full of metals. Virtually any metal that anyone requires is here and is available very cheaply. You can see the gold is available perhaps more cheaply than we picked it up in the last place. So it's always worth buying things extra cheap, and then you can trade those in for extra value. Having done so, let's check out those contracts, and we now have another one. We now have to deliver the auto fabricators. We get a few hours to do that, so let's fly off and let's make sure we collect those on our run as we journey off to Altair. When taking off from any starport, as soon as I've pressed the launch key, I like to go into the map and select our destination, pathfind our route, and that means we can simply head on there as soon as that thing can take off. And as each station manually rotate our craft around, it gives us all that time to go into the map our route. It saves time doing that before we set off and jet our way out there. Arriving in Altair, we find the Solo Orbital and a few names that you may remember from the Frontier game. It's always great to see those big colonies highlighted from the old game, and we can visit those along with Wolf 359 and Ross 128 and all the other systems that we visited in the first game. And you can see this station is a little bit further away from what looked like a white dwarf collapsing star, and you can see there are a number of ships behind us on the radar, but we can make our way there pretty quickly. We won't get stopped, and at this stage we're not really carrying much except for a full load of palladium, which in some systems is enough to make us get stopped, but in this system it is relatively friendly. So even though I am scanning these guys just to make sure, it is relatively friendly, so we should get there still in one piece. Once again, approaching the station from the planet's side, make sure that we are at least somewhere near the front of the thing, and there's nothing more boring than finding the rear of a station and having to fly and boost your way over to the entrance. And sometimes we can't always find the entrance, but at least if we appear from the planet side we have a good chance of finding that, particularly the cube stations, which really do take some effort to find the entrance to those. But we must remember to make contact and book ourselves a landing pad, because if we forget, we'll have a certain time to exit a station before it opens fire. And yes, stations can open fire on us at any point and blow us up.
Landing gear deployed.
Get fines for landing in the wrong bay and even blocking the entrance, so we can't hang around, we have to get on with the landing. Solo Orbiter is a great place to come if you want to trade items, but not an amazing place if you want to buy those in. So let's check out that bulletin board. What have we got here? Well, 2 bounty hunters required. That's another type of mission. And what do we have? 3 copper for 3 grand. Well, copper is one of the cheapest metals, so you can probably pick that up and make a nice profit. And look at that, more gold required. We already have an order for 2 gold destined for Ashby City, but because this order is actually valued more than the order of Ashby City, I'm actually going to sell the gold that I bought for Ashby, and I'm going to use that to actually take on this mission. You can see that influences our reputation in the friendly zone, and it will also increase the influence of that party, that faction in the system. And if you can get both risen all the way up there, then you'll be allied. But in the meantime, let's sell our Palladium for a massive 1,202 credits per ton. And I can tell you, with a ship load of those, that brings us out eventually to a nice tidy profit. I'll take it. So let's move on. We have some more money in the bank, 1.2 million. That's not really going to be enough, but let's see what these guys sell. Well, do they sell what we need? We have marine equipment there, and we have a bunch of other things, but they also have, amazingly, a rare item. Rare items we will find later on are worth a considerable amount, so let's collect those 22 tons, and we'll use those in the next play guide, and we'll see exactly how to use those. Rare items are worth a lot of money, as you can imagine, and we'll gain the best prices for those in the very next guide. You can see auto fabricators, they do not supply those. The supply chain is empty, so maybe they'll bring a nice profit, but they don't sell those. So we've sold the Palladium, and we've sold our gold that we should have bought for Lewiston Star. And unfortunately for us, we'll have to find some more gold to fulfill that order. But that's not all the orders that we have in our inventory. Yes, we have actually a slave order. The only place to pick up slaves, as far as I know, very locally, is in the Avic system, and Prospect is the place we are heading towards. So once again, while we wait for that landing platform to finish lowering, we can choose our destination along the Pathfinder route, and that won't take us long to get there. See, I went straight through the red side of the letterbox. That's because on the radar there was nothing in front of me, and yes, the radar plays an important part in this game. You can see ships out there in space, and you can see if they are in front of us, and boost out if they are not. So we'll have to make sure that we look at the radar even when we enter space stations at some point, because when we enter those space stations, sometimes there are craft in the area, and perhaps there will be an Anaconda parked ready, waiting to get out of that letterbox, and crashing into that at high speed. There will only be one loser. In solo mode, that one loser is only going to be us. So you can imagine the difficulties in multiplayer mode, with lots and lots of players, and sometimes players deliberately block things and get in our way and cause havoc, because some players just can do that. So here we go. This is Avic. Avic Station, not Savic from Star Trek. This is Avic. And here we will find the slaves. Even though we are taking care of those slaves, it still leaves us with the problem of the auto fabricators. Where do we find those? Well, one place is Chi Aranis, and that isn't very far away. You can see it is blue. That means it is a high-tech system, and high-tech is really what we want for automatic fabrication units. The place we can look at is Satsak, or again, however you pronounce those things, and we've been to that location already. We'll be going back again. So let's check this Bruce Prospect out. In the local map, we can see the galaxy map. It's quite close to everything else in the Federation, it seems, and you can see the local landmarks popping up already. Again, if you store a ship, it will appear on the map, but you can also see orange markers where our current missions are. So if we forget our missions in progress, we can actually check out the galaxy map, and the galaxy will actually show us where they are, which is great. And it doesn't actually tell you those days, but it tells you where they are. So let's check out our status in this system, and you can see we are virtually neutral, friendly overall. You can see on the left hand panel, but the Sirius Corporation, we've helped them out so much that we are virtually allied with those guys, and we can work with a serious corporation here. But what happens if we are interdicted? The best thing to do is to head for the escape vector, and as long as we find that, it means our pursuer will find it more difficult, and as long as we make that life difficult for that guy, it means we can evade the interdiction. And every interdiction is usually possible to evade, and we don't have to go through with every fight. We have some weapons, but we don't want to use them at the moment because this is a trade run, not a combat run. So let's continue. A lot of things can happen on the way, as you can see, to any one starport, and we can check out once again those temporary system denizens flying around that system. Some of those will be friendly, and some of those won't. If they are friendly, if we are allied with the system, they will appear in green, and you saw that's friendly there appearing in green, and enemies with a wanted may appear in red, but they will certainly have a red wanted next to those and are best avoided. So once again, planet side in, let's head in there, and once we get down, having pressed the 75% key, remember we'll have to wait for those last few megameters and those last few seconds to tick down. When we are 5, maybe 4 seconds to go, we'll hit the 100% and we'll just get there. An outpost, it's always important to align ourselves up with the docking bay, and that will appear in orange in the docking box, and the docking cage perhaps will alight from a very long distance away, maybe more than one you can see, so it's always important to make sure you are landing in the right one. You'll see 04 is above one docking cage, but we need number 5, so sometimes that may not appear until you get quite close to those. So let's fly a bit closer. You can see the cage lights up, and on the side of that it clearly says number 5. So number 5 standing by. Let's head on in. Point is actually floating in mid-air, so if we are too low, particularly in a very small craft, we will actually be under the docking point, so we'll have to raise our altitude. In a big ship like this it isn't really a problem, but you saw that we were too far ahead and we actually scraped our paintwork being too low. So usually it's good to float just above and anticipate that, and you can see various things in the bulletin boards. We can gain reputation by reliably delivering packages to Tulfa, and Tulfa always appears on these things. They have a wide range of influence in this galaxy, and I may have even pronounced that Tufa, but all these things, they really should have some way of pronouncing these online. Maybe they do, but let's continue scanning and making friends and going places. Unfortunately, the Sirius Corporation won't let us through, and agri-medicines, unfortunately, they don't trust us enough. Heavy metals are available, and it's time to rock. Let's check out the first one. It's gold. Let's buy a few of those, and sometimes gold is a necessity. Let's check out that Palladium. It's quite expensive, and Bruce Prospect is not known for its cheap prices, unfortunately, but a couple of gold should still pay off that order. And slaves is the order of the day. Let's order a couple of those, and that is another one of those jobs on the job list completed. 44,000 credits, and you can see bio waste. Who wants to buy that? Well, you'll be surprised that people do buy bio waste. Let's check out our cargo. In there we have the 2 slaves, we have a number of gold, and we have the Altair skin as well, Altarian skin, and our orders, it should be completely fulfilled. Also fabric cases there, still awaiting that delivery. So while we're in this sector of the galaxy, let's just hop on to the next system, which happens to be Chi Orionis. And again, if you have a really small craft, it is a real pain to get to this system, because you have to fly through a very large number of what can only be described as red dwarf stars. They are purple and they really do take no harvesting whatsoever, so you can't even fuel scoop around those, and you have to be on your best behaviour. But in a big ship like this with a big fuel tank, give or take a fuel scoop, you can get there perhaps even in one jump. Well, having chosen our destination, let's take off. And of course, if we hold down the F key, press G, press enter, and then press tab, that means we can be on our way, and that can be exciting to avoid the megastructure as we fly past that at high speed. Orionis is quite a small system, and it only has 2 starports floating around that thing. They aren't very large and they don't contain much, but what they do have is also fabricators, and you can see both of those stations are high-tech refineries, so there will be a number of minerals on offer, plus a number of high-tech materials. It even gives you the distance. Some of those are closer than others, so it's important to get the right one, and the closest one if all you need is one particular material. So let's chart a course for the closest one, and that will appear of course on Navicom. That Navicom will give us the readout of the closest materials first, as we discovered with the exploring guide, and so let's head on out. Every new vehicle in the game will appear on the radar, and it will also appear as a message in the info panel, and so you can see if 4 other craft or 2 other craft have appeared, and you can then spot if they are before us or behind us. And sometimes craft spawn out of stations, of course, and they will appear. You'll see those appearing almost as comets in the game, flying around at high speed. But when we get close to those comets are actually other vehicles. You can see a comet approaching there. That is a vehicle flying around there in super cruise, and we can stop that vehicle, known as interdiction. And we've seen already one person has tried to interdict us. We weren't for having it in this case, and let's disembark from this particular journey and check out this place. Far right, I'll just point out the illicit cargo band above our fuel tank readout to the right there, and illicit cargo means we're actually carrying slaves, which are illegal in this particular system or in this particular starport, and so in order to get around that, well, we'll have to be careful. If we get scanned, we'll be taxed, and that tax is only very small, but it does amount. If we carry huge numbers of slaves, in fact 8 slaves will give us a 27,000 credit tax if we get caught carrying 8 slaves, as I found out. So if you get caught twice with 8 slaves, that's 52 grand, and that's 1 mission written off. So there are quite a number of these executive slave missions, freelance consultants scattered around, and for 44 or more K, I've certainly known maybe 65K for 2 slaves being available. So if we can scoop those up, what we need to do is to power ourselves into the landing bay as quickly as possible, and then we don't get scanned. Unfortunately, doing that at high speed means we have to align that letterbox up pretty quickly, and if it appears scanned, or you can have the computer say scan detected, then we will be taxed. But in this case you didn't hear and you didn't see the scan detected, and that means we haven't been taxed. So let's land and let's check out that cargo in the commodities market that we can scoop up. And again, let's not even bother refueling. We have to refuel every 10 seconds in a Sidewinder, and we have to scoop every single body in a small craft, but in ours we don't. And apart from sliding on the floor and spoiling our paintwork, we don't even have to buy that either. In the bulletin board there seems to be a seek and destroy, an assassination mission, and we can even hike our reputation by carrying slaves. They do take slaves for mere reputation. Even narcotics, 11 narcotics will give us a great amount. But narcotics are again illegal, and in this case the goods must be stolen as well, which means you'll have to find those in a battle zone or some kind of canister floating around space. That means we will be containing illicit cargo, just like we are at the moment. That illicit cargo appears illegal, you can see on the right hand panel, so the game really does show you the fact that we are carrying those slaves. So let's check out the contacts, and yes, it is possible to sell those slaves. We have no fines, you can see at the moment, but yes, we can sell those slaves even at the starport, because on the black market they are actually worth quite some money. 400 plus credits. 400 plus is, well, not much I'm afraid when we're talking thousands per ton, but well, 400 credits, you can offload those for a small gain. And what are we going to pick up in this situation? The copper is fairly cheap but not amazing. The auto fabricators there, and let's check out what else they have. Well, it's really the auto fabricators that we need, and we actually need 6 auto fabricators, so let's go ahead and buy those. By comparing the prices against the galactic average in the far column, we can see if those are cheap or expensive, and they really have to be very cheap compared to the galactic average to be worth something. If we are looking at the seller's market, of course, the supply here for virtually all of the technological goods is great value, but it isn't the best value in the entire game, and we are only here to pick up those auto fabricators. We can also pick up non-lethal weapons, and we can pick up reactive armor as well, so similar to the system next to walls here, I forget the name, but there you can pick up non-lethal weapons and reactive armor. So perhaps there we could have picked up the auto fabricators, but I haven't mapped this system out entirely yet. I do know that this system requires something, and by clicking on the info and checking out our system, we can see it requires 2 of the illegal slaves we have on board. So let's get rid of our illegality and let's make for that system. Let's dump those slaves and let's grab that cash. Even though this isn't a review of this game, I really do appreciate the vast range of sound effects, and every ship has its own sound effects, and every engine sounds differently. Even if you were passing those in space, you can hear a Sidewinder and you can detect various vessels around us. Of course, if we have 5.1 and surround sound, or if we have headphones, some things we can hear from all around, and that gives us virtual sight and sound. And in lieu of a 360-degree projector, that's probably the best we can offer. You can see slaves are certainly illegal as we return to this same port that we picked up the coal town earlier on, and so you can see it will require us to be careful, and while we are here we can be interdicted, and they will try to blow up our ship. I've certainly known our cargo hatch to be blown off and cargo lost, particularly in a small ship trying to get to someplace, and sometimes those scraps are best avoided by locating the wanted guys and simply avoiding those, giving those a wide berth to begin with. Approach this hexagonal cube type station. Sometimes it's hard to find the entrance and we can be flying around that thing, and I've certainly been known to fly around the sides and get lost. So the first thing to note is the very bottom of that thing will have red lights and they will be in a square formation, and the top will have blue lights. Maybe you'll see the blue lights I'm heading towards at the moment. They're in a square pattern in each corner, so as we head towards blue flashing lights, that's the entrance. And if we didn't know, on the red shape you may be able to see there are arrows pointing towards the entrance on the very sides of the object on the instrument panel. So even if we can't see the station, we can see the arrows on the sides of that station on that object on the instrument panel, and so we should be able to line ourselves up. So we boosted into the entrance and avoided yet again a scan. Again, apologising for any delays and stuttering there, and we avoided the scan, so let's land before they change their mind. Do we even bother to refuel? Well, in this case, yes. Sometimes it is worth bothering to refuel, and of course the less fuel we have on board, the lighter our ship. But let's get rid of those slaves, and that gives us that 4,000 profit. It increases us. We are still neutral in the system, but it increases our reputation. Zilig Depot, or Zalug, or however I pronounce that, is a place that I don't really visit that often, and importing some slaves will increase that reputation slowly until I become allied. And looking for couriers, well, those pay very little prices, and unless you go into those places anyway, it's probably not worth checking out those. Let's check out our own cargo. We have the gold, the skin, and the auto fabricators in the cargo hold, and they should match and tally up with the left hand panel with the orders. And we can also see a long list of claims as well listed on the transactions panel, so we can see what claims we have available, and those all check out. It tells us where we need to go, and of course those will be also on the galaxy map. So all we need to do whilst we are in this area is let's buy some more coltan, because this is relatively cheap in this system, and as we're heading back to Altair, it is a good idea to take the coltan to Locale and take the Palladium from there to Altair, and that gives us a nice profit. So I'll meet you in Altair in our next Playguide, where we take a look at the rares, and that will be all about rares, and we'll take a long run at that. And now we've sold those slaves, we notice no more illicit cargo either. So that's how to navigate around the law. Thank you.